So I'm going to save this document, and it's asking me if I want to replace. If you're saving for the first time, you won't see that particular dialog box. So I'm going to replace this. Okay. All right, so now I've saved my document. Now that's part one of what I need to do to view this within the web browser. So I've saved my document. Now I want to open my web browser. I've got two web browsers open. And then I want to open the document in the web browser, and then I will see my what I've done here. So let's see. I'm going to go to Firefox. Now there's several different ways that I can view my document or load my document into Firefox. The first way is under File, Open File, and I've opened it directly to my folder here. And voila, we've got my index.html. Another way to do this is, if you're using BBEdit, you can just drag the icon right there. Now you don't see it changing because it's already loaded, but if I open up a new tab here, and then I go back to there, and I drop it in, it loads up. Or there's another option. I can go into the Finder, oops, and here's where my file is saved. I can take this file and I can actually drag it on top of the browser. Okay, it's already loaded, so you won't see a change there. And then there's yet another way. Now I'm using BBEdit, and if you're using BBEdit, it gives you some options under markup. You'll see something called Preview. Now Google Chrome is set as the default browser for me, so this is why it's asking if I want to preview it in Google Chrome. And then I have some other options here, Preview. So if I hit Preview in Google Chrome, I get the same thing. Alright, so I'm going to go back to Firefox. And in here we see that I have 4 lines of text, but they all came out as one long line. Why is that? Well, HTML only recognizes one character of space at a time. So even if I put in 10 spaces after roses are red, it would only appear as one space. Even if I put in a carriage return or just hit the return key, it's going to appear as one space. It won't break the line unless you specifically tell the browser to break it. So in order to do that, we're going to go back into our HTML document, and we're going to put in some breaks here. Now, to break a line, the command is BR. Now, as we go further along, what we will eventually end up doing is doing BR/, and we'll talk about that later. But for right now, to keep it simple, we want just a basic break after every line. Now, because the "and so are you" is on the last line, I don't need to put in a break here, but I'll put one in here anyhow. All right, then my sequence, I saved it, and now I'm just going to drop it back into my browser, and you see that it's broken on the lines here that I've created. Now let me go back into here. The break is one of the few HTML tags that doesn't actually have an end tag. You'll run into a few of these tags that are just sort of standalone tags that don't have a corresponding end tag. This is one of the more popular ones here. You can also double up on the breaks or triple up or put however many breaks you need in here. So I'm going to put in another line. I'm going to call this Angela's poem. and I'm going to put in 2 breaks. Oops, BR. Don't want to put in a B because B is bold, and we'll talk about that a bit later. Okay, so I'm going to save my document, and then I'm going to go back to my web page, and I can actually reload the page here. So I'm going to hit Command R, but you can also hit F5 if you're on a PC. And now you see that I have a break. There are 2 lines here between Angela's poem and Roses Are Red. Now I'm going to go back to my document in BBEdit, and I want to make the first line stand out. I want it to be a bit of a heading. There are a couple ways I can do this, and what you'll find in HTML is that there are often a couple ways to accomplish the same thing, but you need to determine what the precise look of the document you want. So for instance, I'm going to make Angela's poem bold. And the command for bold is really simple. It's B. So you have a start B and an end B. So you have B to start with and B to end with. That means everything between here and here is going to be in bold. Now I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to my browser, reload, and you see that now my title or my heading is in bold. Now there's also another way to create a heading. Within HTML, there are a series of tags, H tags, which allow you to have headings. So we have H1 through H6. So 1 is the largest, 6 is the smallest. So let's go back into our HTML document here. And I'm going to get rid of the bold. Now, when you delete tags, make sure if you delete the start tag, you also delete the end tag, and vice versa. So if you delete the end tag, make sure you also delete the start tag. Let me show you what happens if you don't delete, or if you delete the end tag without the start tag. So I've deleted the end tag here, saved it. All my text is bold. And this isn't the look that I want to create. And it's also malformed HTML. And it's important that when you're coding your HTML, you want your code to be valid. Because if it isn't valid, then there are going to be problems that pop up. And what I mean by valid is that you want to make sure that all your tags are nested correctly and that your code is written in a correct way. If your code is written incorrectly, what sometimes happens, depending on how many mistakes you have and how bad the mistake is, some browsers will figure out what you're trying to do. Other browsers will say, I don't know what this person's trying to do. It's, they've made a mistake here. I'm going to display this however I feel. So you may have inconsistent results in different browsers. So it's really important to make sure that you have correct code. And in some HTML programs or some text editor programs, there's actually something called validate, where you can validate your code. Let's see if I can find the validate here. Somewhere in here. I will get back to that. But the validate will go through and it will tell you what parts of your code are right and what parts are wrong. And well, mostly it'll list everything that's wrong in there. And then you should go back and fix the things that are wrong. And I know a lot of people get lazy and you don't want to fix it, but it's actually very good to do that. And it's also a bit of a learning process. Anyhow, I've deleted my end bold tag. I'm going to delete my start bold tag. Now, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to put a H1 tag in. So H1 is the biggest heading you can create. So H1, and then I also need an end H1. And the thing about H1 tags are that it automatically adds space after it, unless we use CSS, and we'll talk about CSS a bit later. When we use CSS, which are cascading style sheets, we can specify that H1 tags do not have any space or have a lot of space or have a little space, but we'll worry about CSS later. By default, H1 tags will add a space underneath the line. So when I save this, I go back into my browser and reload, I have a larger heading here. Now I'm going to go back to my HTML and then I'm going to do an H2 for the next line. So you can see the difference between an H1 and an H2. Oops, remember to put your end slash there. And now you see that I'm being a bit sloppy with my code. I'm using uppercase, I'm using lowercase. HTML is case insensitive, so you can use uppercase and you can use lowercase. If you want to keep your code tidy, I recommend being consistent with your code. Normally I prefer to have my, my tags be uppercase. Alright, so I'm going to save this, go back into my browser, reload, and you see that this is the right here that I've highlighted, that's an H1. Roses are red, it's an H2. So I'm going to go back in, I'm going to put an H3 for the next line. And you also see that it automatically puts a line underneath, so I don't even need the break tag there. Okay, so we have H3 and H3. And I'm going to do, while I'm at it, I'm going to do H4. Slash H4. And an H5. And why stop at 5? You may as well go on to 6. In for a penny, in for a pound. And we don't have an extra line here, so I'm just going to, oops, H6. Okay, and that's it. It doesn't go up to 7, 8, 9, 10. It goes 1 through 6. 1 is the largest, 6 is the smallest. Now when I go back into my browser, so you see the differences in the size. This is an extra line here. This is our H6 and it's quite small. Okay, so let's go back into our HTML document. So now we've created our very first HTML document. We have worked with H tags. We've learned bold. We've learned breaks. And so now I think we're ready to get a bit more creative.